Golden Eyes surfaced from the early soundtrack, and buried inside those unfinished lyrics are clues that completely reframe the sequel. The moment you hear the lyrics, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't written as a random song. It doesn't just sound like music, it feels like a carefully constructed narrative hidden in plain sight. Small details that seemed abstract suddenly align into something much more concrete, revealing relationships, motives, and hidden truths. What first sounded like a poetic expression starts to feel like a coded message, pointing directly to the role this new character will play. I saw you standing there, a reflection of mine. That line alone shifts everything from theory into something much more concrete. What once felt like speculation suddenly carries weight, as if the story is quietly confirming what it had only hinted at before. It moves the conversation from guessing to recognizing a pattern that was always there. This isn't about similarity, it's about identity. The language being used doesn't describe two people who are alike, it describes two people who are fundamentally connected at their core. It reframes the relationship from coincidence into something defined, something intentional, something real, and the idea of a reflection takes it even further. A reflection doesn't suggest resemblance, it suggests duplication, an exact mirror, something that exists because the original does. That choice of wording implies that what we're looking at isn't just parallel, it's the same origin split into two. And when paired with Father's fire and our Mother's light, it stops feeling like poetry and starts sounding like confirmation. This points directly to shared origin and blood. These points directly point to a shared origin, something rooted in family rather than coincidence. The balance between fire and light suggests two forces coming together to create the same source, reinforcing the idea that these characters were never separate to begin with. It frames their connection as something inevitable, written into their very existence. And once you see it that way, the implication becomes impossible to ignore. This is about blood, not just similarity or parallel paths, but a bond that runs deeper than anything else in the story. It confirms that whatever conflict exists between them, it's built on a foundation they can't escape. For a long time, theories about a hidden twin tied to Rumi's early concept designs existed in that uncertain space between speculation and possibility. Fans pointed to fragments, early sketches, and visual parallels, but none of it ever felt fully confirmed, just quietly persistent in the background of the story. But now, the lyrics don't just support that theory. They reinforce it from multiple angles. Instead of a single hint or isolated reference, layered connections are forming across imagery, dialogue, and emotional framing. Each element seems to echo the same idea, as if different parts of the narrative are independently pointing toward the same truth. And that's what changes everything. When multiple signals begin aligning like this, the theory stops feeling like interpretation and starts feeling like structure. It suggests the hidden twin isn't just a fan idea attached to early concepts, but a core part of the story's design gradually being revealed. Now, the lyrics don't just support that theory, they reinforce it from multiple angles. Each line adds another layer, stacking evidence in a way that feels deliberate rather than accidental. What once seemed like scattered hints now aligns into a clear and consistent pattern. And that's what changes everything. When different elements, visuals, lyrics, and narrative themes all point in the same direction, it stops being a theory and starts feeling like a reveal. The idea of a hidden twin isn't just plausible anymore. It feels like something the story has been building toward all along. Everything lines up too perfectly to ignore. A mirrored identity, shared lineage, and a connection that exists even before they meet. You came to me as an enemy, but something in you felt true. This is where the story takes a sharp turn. Because this isn't a reunion, it's a collision. The emotional tone shifts instantly from curiosity to conflict, suggesting that their first encounter is defined by opposition rather than recognition. It carries tension, uncertainty, and the sense that something deeper is fighting to surface beneath the hostility. If the fourth member is truly a twin, then she wasn't raised alongside Rumi. Their bond wasn't built through shared memories or a common past, it was fractured from the beginning. That absence of connection creates space for misunderstanding, for manipulation, and for two people who should recognize each other to instead stand on opposite sides. And that's what makes it powerful, because even in conflict, there's a pull neither of them can fully explain, a familiarity that cuts through the tension. It suggests that no matter how far apart their paths have taken them, something fundamental still ties them together, waiting to be acknowledged. She was shaped somewhere else, possibly within the demon world itself. That means her first appearance isn't emotional, it's hostile. Think about what that implies. Two individuals, from the same origin, but shaped by completely different realities, each molded by the world that claimed them. Their identities aren't just personal choices, they're the result of environments, beliefs, and forces that push them in opposite directions. One raised to protect, taught to fight for balance, to defend something greater than herself. The other potentially raised to destroy, conditioned to see that same purpose as a threat, or even an obstacle that must be eliminated. It's not just a difference in roles, it's a complete inversion of purpose. And that contrast creates something far more intense than a typical rivalry. It turns their conflict into something deeply personal, almost inevitable, like two halves of the same story forced into opposition. Because when origin is shared but destiny is divided, the clash isn't just physical, it's emotional, philosophical, and impossible to avoid. That creates something deeper than conflict. It creates misunderstanding at the core of their identity. And that kind of tension doesn't resolve easily. Lilac crown and golden eyes. That line isn't just aesthetic, it's intentional, because the visual language here matches earlier unused designs tied to a second character. The lilac tone connects directly to Rumi's established color palette, and that's not something that feels accidental. It visually anchors the connection between them, suggesting shared origin, shared essence, or even a mirrored identity expressed through color language. In storytelling like this, color isn't decoration, it's identity shorthand, and lilac immediately signals familiarity. But the golden eyes? That's where everything shifts. It becomes the defining difference, the one feature that separates reflection from divergence. Eyes in narrative symbolism often represent perception, power, or even fate, so changing them changes everything about how the character is read, and that contrast matters. Because it suggests this isn't just a twin who mirrors Rumi, it exceeds or deviates from her fundamentally. We have royalty in our bones. That line reframes everything we thought we understood about Rumi's origin. This isn't just about being half demon anymore. This is about lineage. Something ancient, something inherited, something that predates the identities they've built for themselves. It suggests their story doesn't begin with their choices, but with a legacy already set in motion long before they were aware of it. That kind of framing turns personal conflict into inherited destiny. And that inheritance isn't just symbolic, it carries weight, power, and expectation. It implies that what they are capable of isn't learned or earned in the traditional sense, but passed down, embedded in their very existence. In that way, their abilities become less about training and more about awakening something already inside them. This ultimately places both sisters in a position far beyond ordinary hunters. They're not just participants in the fight, they're central to it in a way that reshapes the hierarchy around them. Their lineage elevates them into something closer to anchors of the entire conflict, where their existence alone shifts the balance of the world they're in. We sit on platinum thrones. Platinum isn't chosen randomly here. It represents something stronger, rarer, and more refined than gold. This suggests evolution. What began as a defined unit is starting to feel like an evolving structure, one that adapts as new forces enter the story and reshape its internal balance. Growth implies expansion, but transformation suggests identity is being rewritten. That shift also changes the group's internal chemistry, with new dynamics, hidden connections, and unresolved tensions surfacing. Huntrix stops functioning like a fixed team and starts resembling something fluid and unpredictable. Each addition doesn't just add strength, it alters the shape of what already exists, and that's where the uncertainty deepens. Something more complete doesn't always mean something safer. It can just as easily mean something harder to control. The same evolution that strengthens them could also introduce instability, making Huntrix not just more powerful but potentially more dangerous in ways they don't yet fully understand. You saw our path entwined. At first, it sounds emotional and almost poetic. But look closer, and it hints at something much deeper. This suggests foresight, not guesswork, not hope, but actual awareness of what's coming. The wording shifts the idea from emotional intuition into something far more precise, as if the knowledge being described is already confirmed within the narrative framework. It implies a level of certainty that goes beyond interpretation and into recognition of events not yet unfolded, which means the fourth member may possess abilities tied to perception, or even future sight. This isn't just about heightened awareness, but the ability to interpret patterns before they fully materialize, reading outcomes before they happen. In that sense, she wouldn't just be reacting to the story's events, she would be anticipating them, and that changes her role entirely. A character with foresight doesn't simply participate in conflict, she influences it, even unintentionally, by understanding consequences before others can see them. That kind of ability places her in a unique position within the group, where knowledge itself becomes a form of power. That changes her role completely. She's not just another addition to the team. It reframes her presence as something structural rather than supplementary, almost like a narrative pivot point rather than a supporting character. Her introduction would reshape how every other member operates. Because her awareness would sit slightly ahead of everyone else's understanding, she could be the one who sees the outcome before it happens. That kind of perception turns uncertainty into pattern recognition, where possibilities aren't guessed, but traced. Instead of reacting to danger, she would already be aware of its trajectory, which makes her less of a follower in events and more of a silent interpreter of what's unfolding. And if that's true, then every decision she makes carries weight far beyond the present moment. Even the smallest action could ripple into consequences she has already foreseen, placing her in a position where choice is never simple. It transforms decision-making into something heavier, because she isn't just choosing what happens now, she's navigating what those choices unlock later. At first, it sounds emotional and almost poetic, but look closer and it hints at something much deeper. This suggests foresight, not guesswork, not hope, but actual awareness of what's coming. The wording shifts the idea from emotional intuition into something far more precise, as if the knowledge being described is already confirmed within the narrative framework. It implies a level of certainty that goes beyond interpretation and into recognition of events not yet unfolded. This is a story about identity, legacy, and transformation. Golden Eyes could be telling the truth. This means the sequel isn't just continuing the story, it's redefining it completely. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the mysteries of K-pop Demon Hunters.